Hello and welcome to the State of Shakespeare. I'm Garrett Vandermeer.
And I'm Jim Elliott.
And today we have Benjamin Curns. Hello, Benjamin.
Hello, Garrett.
Benjamin is the director and fight director for the American Shakespeare Company's production of Macbeth, which is part of the 2017-2018 Wicked Folly National Tour. And Benjamin Curns has been an artistic associate with the American Shakespeare Center since 2001. During his tenure with the company, he served as an actor, musician, company manager, director, and fight director. He's also toured the country on multiple times and has appeared in 9 Actors Renaissance seasons and 5 summer seasons. Benjamin is a member of the Actors Equity Association, a certified actor combatant with the Society of American Fight Directors, and holds a black belt in American Freestyle Karate. What a resume. Welcome, Benjamin.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for joining us. I think the first question is, you hold a black belt in American Freestyle Karate. What is that?
Wait, American Freestyle Karate?
There's a karate studio in Stanton, Virginia, where the American Shakespeare Center is located. And after I played Richard III there, I was sort of looking for something that was going to help me get into a little bit better shape. And then I was hoping for something that would also help sort of get my mind in better shape as well. And then I also, because I've been doing a lot more fight directing work, I knew that there's no way that it would not help that aspect of my work. So I didn't actually take a martial arts class until I was 37 years old,
Wow,
36 years old.
That's coming to it kind of late.
So yeah, I was a very old white belt in a class full of very young children, but I fell in love with it instantly, and it did. I found that when I was in class and training, that I was never so singularly focused. There was nowhere else in the world where my mind was only on what I was doing at that moment.
Maybe I should set the auditory scene for our listeners. So, Ben, you're joining us from, is it Staunton, Virginia or Stanton, Virginia?
No, I'm actually in Carrboro, North Carolina right now at the famed. I went to grad school at UNC Chapel Hill for my MFA in acting. I graduated a month ago.
Congratulations.
And, thanks very much. You're
at that existential life-changing moment where you've invested all this time and energy, and now they gave you your piece of paper and you're off in the wide world again. How does it feel?
Feels great. It feels great. Like karate, grad school was something that most of my colleagues did when they were much younger than I was when I started. And I thought, after all the years that I had spent at ASC, if you've ever seen a show at ASC, and I encourage people to do so, they have a very specific performance style where the way that they approach the plays and the work, I think, is sort of singular onto them.
That's the original practice, correct? Can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Sure. I mean, the company was founded on the principle of, if you perform Shakespeare's plays and the plays of Shakespeare's contemporaries under the conditions for which they were written, you'll find that they produce sort of more excitement. And some of those things include, performing in universal light. So the audience is under the same light as the actors, by making the theater more of an actor-based medium rather than a director or designer-based medium, sort of eliminating technology and having, scene changes, any sound effects or music is all performed by the actors themselves, and try to make it sort of a more human-based type thing.
In your experience, now that you've reconnected through your MFA program with other practices, what do you think is gained or lost by the approach with original practice at the American Shakespeare Center?
Well, what is gained is there's more emphasis on the language itself. My experience has been that outside of companies like the ASC, directors and designers feel like Shakespeare needs their help in a lot of ways. And ASC, and because I'm sort of a disciple of the ASC philosophy, we tend to think that Shakespeare doesn't need their help, and that if you trust the language and if you spend time trying to communicate the language freely, then the audience will be along for the ride, and that they don't need the help of lots of people, of all these designers in order to help illuminate that. I mean, it's all in the news now. I mean, on Monday, obviously there was this big news thing about Bank of America and Delta removing their funding from the New York Public Theater production of Julius Caesar because they're portraying Caesar as Trump. And I hope that lots of people in New York and from elsewhere in the country, go to see that production. I do think that, this big news cycle is offering them a lot of free publicity, and that's great. I just tend to think that no matter how you produce Julius Caesar, I think your audience is going to be able to make the connection. They're going to figure out how that play speaks to them. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. So the flip side of the coin is, so after getting away from original practice for a while and experiencing 3 years at the graduate program at North Carolina Chapel Hill, what things did you add to your toolbox?
That's a good question. I think what is gained is that there's more emphasis on actor-to-actor connection. The pitfalls of an original practices type theater is the actors can fall into a trap of being sort of slaves to the audience. And I think an inexperienced actor might find themselves, there's a danger of sort of like hamming things up or playing too much to the audience, and it's really easy to fall into that trap because you're getting this instant reaction from them, whether they're laughing or crying. You can see exactly how they're reacting to things. So the danger of that is that the connection between actors can be weakened. So one of the things that's gained by keeping the audience in the dark is that the actor, the only person that they have to draw other energy from, is the other people that are on stage with them telling that story. So when I go back to direct at ASC, I try to emphasize that there's an importance to both. I mean, we have to be conscious of our visible audience, but not at the cost of an actor-to-actor connection.
The speech that you've chosen to share with us today is from Act 3, Scene 1. It's To be thus is nothing, a speech that I don't think we've discussed yet on the State of Shakespeare. This will be a first time for this speech, so we're looking forward to hearing about it. Why did you choose this speech?
It's this soliloquy that Macbeth has that I think gets very little attention. It gets upstaged by the dagger speech and certainly by tomorrow and tomorrow. But what I love about this speech, particularly for an actor playing to a visible audience, is this is a point in the play where Macbeth has already murdered King Duncan. And unlike some of the other villains in Shakespeare, like, say, Iago or Aaron the Moor or Richard III, they constantly have these monologues to the audience where they talk about what they've done and what they're about to do. And
with giddy delight often, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing that I think sets Macbeth apart, is that he constantly has these soliloquies to tell people, but he doesn't have the same delight. I mean, he's still doing the same nasty things, but he's got all this anguish. And I love this speech because I feel like here's the speech where he's alone on the stage and he knows the audience must be feeling bad about what he's done, and he's got this speech, and I find it so active, and that he has to make his case to his audience. He's got to tell them, like, and it's not even so much about here's why I did what I did, but it's like, you must know what I'm thinking about doing, but can you blame me? I mean, look at the situation that I'm in. I just, he's just like, don't you see what kind of danger I'm in? The kind of danger that my wife is in, and
I think that's fascinating because that makes it so much more active than the way I and maybe even Garrett were thinking about it, which is this sort of paranoid rambling about, like, oh my God, now I've done this, and what about this guy? But what you're saying is that it becomes active. He's persuading. He is trying to convince everybody that why wouldn't I do it?
Yeah, I mean, there's this line in there. I guess we'll get to it in a bit, but the line that I love the most is, it's like at line 56, and he says, "He chid the sisters when first they put the name of king upon me and bade them speak to him." And we're told, in our training for Shakespeare, we're never really supposed to hit pronouns, and I tend to agree 99.9% of the time. But here's this moment where he's like, I didn't see those witches by myself. He was there too. And when they told me I was going to be king, his reaction was not to tell them to shut up. His reaction was, tell me what you can tell me about me. So, like, I love this moment with Macbeth saying, like, I know that I look like the bad guy and Banquo looks like the good guy, But like, remember this. Remember, he was just as curious and interested as I am. And remember what they told him. And if he thinks that his kids might be kings, doesn't that put me in some kind of danger? If I did what I did to make my prophecy come true, then why wouldn't he do what he needs to do to make his prophecy come true? And I think that has merit. I mean, you see in the beginning of Act 2, you know, Banquo tells the audience that, you know, he has these cursed thoughts that won't let him sleep. You know, he's also kept up at night, which I think is often, you know, which is not necessarily emphasized in most productions, but I love that idea that, you know, that Banquo is is dangerous, and he's a competent enemy. He's got all the reason in the world, and I've got to act.
I want to return to what you mentioned about pronouns, just because we kind of geek out on language, and
Sure.
and I'm listening to you describe the situation in your own words, and I'm hearing you work the pronouns, and I think we need to come to terms with this, because I too have always heard the trope that you don't emphasize the pronouns. But I think when people are using rhetorical constructs, especially antithesis, they do hit the pronouns for clarity. And why wouldn't you do the same thing on stage? I don't know.
Garrett, all rules were made to be broken.
I think what's important for the actor is that you connect it to action. And if it helps to serve your action, then rules can be bent and can be broken, but you've got to connect it specifically to the action.
I will totally accept that. I think that's marvelous.
Yeah.
Are you ready? Are you ready to read these words for us? I realize, of course, that you're outside in a public situation, so this could get pretty interesting for those people that are around you. But if you're ready to dive in, we'd love to.
No, it'll be great. It'll be very conspiratorial.
Yes.
All right.
I love this.
This is Benjamin Curns reading Macbeth from Macbeth Act 3, Scene 1. And those of you that are following along on our website, these are lines 48 to 71.
To be thus is nothing, but to be safely thus. Our fears in Banquo stick deep, and in his royalty of nature reigns that which would be feared. 'Tis much he dares, and to that dauntless temper of his mind he hath a wisdom that doth guide his valor to act in safety. There is none but he, whose being I do fear, and under him my genius is rebuked, as it is said Mark Antony's was by Caesar. He chid the sisters when first they put the name of king upon me, and bade them speak to him. Then, prophet-like, they hailed him father to a line of kings. Upon my head they placed a fruitless crown, put a barren scepter in my grip, thence to be wrenched with an unlineal hand, no son of mine succeeding. If it be so, for Banquo's issue have I filed my mind. For them, the gracious Duncan, have I murdered, put rancors in the vessels of my peace, only for them, and mine eternal jewel given to the common enemy of man to make them kings, the seed of Banquo kings. Rather than so, come, fate, into the list and champion me to the utterance.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
I was just, you were saying before that you geek out on this language, and depending on which edition that you see, here's a great example of geekdom for me. It's like some editions will have the half line with the attendant's cue, where he says, "They are my lord without the palace gate." Ba-bump, 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 ba-bump. There's like, that's the full line. And then it's followed by this full line, or the half line is "bring them before us," with the idea that those empty feet are the servant exiting. So then the next line would be, "To be thus is nothing, but to be safely thus." However, you could make the case that it goes, bumping back to line 43, "Sirrah, a word with you, attend those men our pleasure, they are my lord." So "attend those men our pleasure, they are my lord" is the shared line, and then they have another shared line, "Without the palace gate, bring them before us." And then the soliloquy starts with, "To be thus is nothing, but to be
Right.
safely thus, right? So then you can make that case that there's all this empty feet after nothing, or you can have all of these empty feet before he starts to be you think about, there he is looking at the throne, or there he is looking at his crown, or there he is, he realizes it's the first time he's been alone with us in some time. And he has this responsibility now to sort of let us know what he's thinking. And especially because we all just heard him say, attend those men our pleasure. We don't know who those guys are yet, but, he knows that there are these, these hired murderers that he's going to use to bump off Banquo. So, the attendant leaves, then he turns and he's got hundreds of eyes looking at him. And he's got to say, look, I know what I'm doing is bad, but come on, hear me out here,
And these are great choices for an actor to be able to choose whether to treat it as a shared line or to be able to place the empty feet before or after the line. That is great material. That's like a gift to an actor, something that they can put in their toolbox.
Absolutely a gift.
And as a director, it's fun because all you have to do as the director is sort of make note that there's all of these different choices available. And then in rehearsal, what's exciting is you can work with that actor and you can talk about what works the best for us, what gives him the most juice or her the most juice in terms of like what helps to energize them and what propels them, or who else is present in the rehearsal that is watching and goes, ooh, that was the one that, that sort of moved me.
I love that. I love the idea of like exploring those choices, and we talk a lot about it. So let's drill down. In line 57, I just want to talk in terms of making it actor for the actor. I know this is a little bit booky and geeky, but it's a really interesting line. It starts on 56, as it is said, Mark Antony's was by Caesar, and then it goes on, he chid the sisters. That could go in a variety of ways, scansion-wise. How do you scan it?
Well, can we give a little background on this line before we dive into the way that it's structured? Because, to be honest, I got a beef with this line, and here's my beef. The minute that he alludes to Mark Antony and Caesar, I'm taken completely out of the play. And instead of thinking about Macbeth, now I'm thinking about Julius Caesar. And it takes me several lines to get back into it, because in my head I'm puzzling through this metaphor. Wait, who's Mark Antony in this metaphor? Who's Caesar? Is Mark Antony a good equivalent to Macbeth? Why does he say that? Why are we talking about Caesar now? Am I the only one?
Well, we all know that Shakespeare was writing Antony and Cleopatra at the same time, so he clearly had Mark Antony on the brain.
And that's an interesting thing that you point out as well, because I think you're right. I think most people in audiences, they'll hear it and they immediately think of Julius Caesar, but Macbeth is actually referring to Octavian.
Oh, indeed. Yeah. Well, I wish he would say so, but I guess it doesn't scan as well, does it?
It doesn't scan. That would make 57 really bad.
Yeah, right.
So anyway,
but to go back to the original point, and and you were saying that you wanted to jump into this line 57, think about it, from the actor's point of view, if that line does take the audience out of it, if they do start thinking of either Octavian or Julius or Mark Antony, if it takes them out of that moment, then he's got to work twice as hard to say, like, hey, eyes back on me. He chid the sisters,
Right. And it is a midline stop there. So he does reload.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, maybe that could be, maybe there could be some empty feet there. Maybe the compositor just, couldn't be bothered. Who knows? We'll never know.
So, Benjamin, you've been at the American Shakespeare Center for a really long time, long enough to call it home, I think. We get from everybody we talk to about it that it's a special place. What makes it so special, and what's going on there now?
Well, for me, what makes it really special, I think, is it's one of the only theaters that's still operating under the company model, which sadly has gone by the wayside in this country. But, you really have an ensemble of actors, and when you're working with these plays, it's fun to see that you and the rest of the ensemble, you start to feel like you're stepping not into the shoes of, Hamlet, so to speak, but maybe into the steps of Burbage, because you tend to find that you play many of the parts that were written for him, or I play many of the parts that were written for Will Sly, or, however it goes. So it's nice to work with the same company of actors and see them do different things, or even see them do the same things and grow and change. I think also the inclusion of live music and every ensemble being its own band is incredibly fun and exciting, I think, for both the ensembles and the audience. To hear contemporary music played live is a real treat. So the Wicked Folly tour, of which Macbeth will be part, will also feature Sense and Sensibility, also The Taming of the Shrew. And in the spring, when the tour ends and it returns to the Blackfriars Playhouse, they'll add Bill Kane's Equivocation to the rep. And I think for an audience to be able to see Macbeth and Equivocation in the same weekend will be incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, the play is very much about Shakespeare and the King's Men crafting and the writing and rehearsing and performing of Macbeth for the first time. So you'll see the same actors who play Macbeth in my production play Macbeth in Equivocation. I think that's a real treat for the audience, and I frankly can't wait to see the production. It's one of my very favorite plays.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. When do you open those plays?
The tour will go through about April of 2018. And then it will return to the Blackfriars Playhouse and perform all 4 shows throughout April, May, and the first half of June.
That's great.
Wow.
So plenty of lead time for our listeners to make plans to come to the American Shakespeare Center.
Yes.
Benjamin Curns, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Ben.
Thank you, guys. I had a great time.
Thanks for joining us for the State of Shakespeare podcast. We invite you to visit stateofshakespeare.com for more episodes, information about each of our guests, and the Shakespeare text you heard on the program, and much more. And we welcome you to join the discussion by liking us on Facebook. That's www.stateofshakespeare.com. Thanks for listening.